Hello everyone and welcome. Today I'm going to talk about native add-on development for IDA. Add-ons could be plugins, standalone apps, or processor modules, file loaders, etc. I'm going to cover how to install and set up the SDK first by using the newly repo for the IDA SDK. Then I'm going to talk a bit about the Hexray CLI tool as well. And then again, I use the ida-cmake project to use the cmake tool to build the add-ons. And finally, I'm going to touch a bit upon Claude Code and Agentic coding. Expect more videos about that topic in the future. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so I'm gonna start by grabbing the SDK from the online repo. It's on IDA SDK in Hexray's organization for version 9.2. So we're just gonna clone it. Now, conventionally, I like to have the folder name ida SDK and then the version. This used to be the zip file name before the SDK was open sourced. So I'm just gonna use the same methodology here, just grab it here. And now we have ida SDK 9.2. Now inside the source folder is where the actual SDK is. If we compare it to 9.1 and all prior versions, we didn't have a source subdirectory. Let me show you the Hexray CLI project. The Hexray CLI project as well under ida-hcli is a nice CLI tool for IDA, and it will have so many things. For example, managing extensions, plugins, licensing, downloading files. And so it's a nice tool to have automation with respect to IDA tasks. Now, I'm gonna clone this and then use it to log in and then grab the SDK with it. And so this is an opportunity as well for you to learn a bit about this tool. Now we're going to be talking about this tool more in the future as it is being developed further and further. So here I cloned it. I'm gonna use the dev here just to set up the virtual environment, and then I'm gonna activate the virtual environment, use HCLI to log in, which has the same effect. We're gonna be the same effect as going to the my.hexrays.com. Alright, so now I'm just gonna activate this. We don't have to activate, we can use the UV directly to run, but I prefer to activate. So here, and now I can just type HCLI, for example, and we can see the help screen. And we have so many commands, for example, knowledge engine, login, license management, check for self updates, and so on. So I'm gonna say CLI login. That's the first step needed for most of the commands. I'm gonna use the email one-time passwords, put my email address, and then wait for the one-time code, paste the code, and log in. Alright, I got the code, so I'm just gonna paste it, and here it is, I'm logged in. Now for a longer session, it's best that I use the API keys. So now that I'm logged in, I can do something like authentication and key, and we will see the subcommands more. So what I want is to create, and here we can give it a name, for example, and it will create a key, it will display the key. I'm gonna skip over that part here, and then once I have the key, I am logged in with an API key for a long-lived session. Then I'm gonna show you how we can use it real quick to download the SDK and so on. Okay, so I got the key installed and I'm logged in. Now we can use other subcommands. So if we go back and type ida-hcli, we should see, for example, the download. The download, of course, is interactive, or you can use everything through the command line. But for now, so here, for example, we can use the minus pattern to find certain things. So here, if I want to download the SDK or the installer, I could specify the direct folder like that, for example. But I'm gonna use the interactive for now. But the whole point of ida-hcli is to really give you CLI interface for automation. So here with the interactivity, and Hexrace now will keep all your files, previous versions. So that's nice. You can have a test pipeline that downloads different SDKs and tests the plugin if it works on different versions of the SDK. So SDK and utility, and for now I'm interested in IDA SDK 9.2, which is the same as the GitHub repo. Of course, now the GitHub repo is gonna keep on evolving, and here is a fixed version, so there is value to getting it through your portal. So now I have the SDK, which has the same structure, which is as if we had the GitHub clone as well. Same thing, src and so on. So let me go back here. So this is the one I cloned, and that's the zip files through ida-hcli. Quick notes about ida-hcli. As I said, it's being developed heavily, and it will have so many things. And if we look at the plugin manager branch, we'll see that it has support to create plugin templates, install plugins. There are even AI agents that teach the AI exactly how to formulate a plugin package and so on. So eventually ida-hcli as well, among all the other things that are in the plans, as we can see from the development log, it will be allowing you to fetch plugins and search plugins and so on. If we explore the Hexrace repo, we already see as well down the line there is the repo here, which is building all the plugins eventually. So there will be lots of plugins in this JSON file that has the metadata, how to retrieve the plugins and so on. So plugins going forward will have a certain well-defined structure that you can use ida-hcli and potentially another UI tool as well to grab, list, install, and manage the plugins. So that's it for the ida-hcli for now. Now, let's start focusing on how to build plugins. So if I explore the SDK folder, we will have the same stuff we've used all the time with IDA. And they do have instructions how to build and compile and so on. Unfortunately, on Windows is really the worst experience. It's not practical at all, and it's a waste of time. But on Linux and Mac, they have the make files. It's as simple as running make, so there's not much to do. But Windows is not nice, and that's why I was motivated 6 years ago to create the ida-cmake project. And just recently I modernized that project to use modern CMake syntax and so on. But prior to that, I archived all the previous versions. So for if you're developing for older IDA, and then 9.1, and recently just for the new modern and 9.2. So the setup is really simple. For conveniences, just you have to specify the IDA SDK. Of course, you can specify it in the command line directly. You don't have to set it. You can also, if you don't want to specify anything, I document a way to have just the regular stuff CMake prefix, and so on. So if you don't want to use the convenience of having a convention where you have to export IDA SDK and clone IDA CMake in a specific folder, you don't have to do that. You can just use your own version. You can specify the CMake prefix to point to IDA CMake, and off you go. So you have all the liberty on how to configure IDA CMake. But for this example, I'm gonna configure it with the most convenient way. So first thing is I'm gonna clone that repo. So the convention is I'm gonna clone it in the IDA SDK 9.2 in source, and it should be here. It should be a subfolder here for convenience. Now you don't have to do that, but let's just keep it like that for the convenience. Okay, and now once it's installed and under the SDK, I can simply grab any template and use it. And even the template could be in a different folder. It doesn't have to be in the same tree as the SDK. And the simple makeup of it, using that convenient way we installed it, is simply we have to include a bootstrap, which all it does really is leverage the IDA SDK environment variable to add it to the CMake prefix. But we don't have to go through that at all. If we look at the other example, we can just simply say find package and use the helper IDA add plugin and just do it like we normally do, add executable or add library and so on. Now, before I build this plugin, I'm gonna tell you about as well a convention used for developing IDA plugins. And it is about having an additional development copy of IDA in your SDK. This just to let you clean it up, make sure you don't mess up your production IDA, you don't deploy your development plugins directly in your profile directory and so on. So keeps things isolated in a development environment. Later, if you're satisfied, you can simply deploy the build plugin anywhere you want. So let's do that. So back to the SDK, we're gonna go to the source and the bin folder. And this is how the IDA sources back at Hexrace look like. So it will be the bin where all the output goes to the bin folder, and we can see here it's pretty much empty. We're gonna take a copy of the IDA 9.2 installation and paste it here. So I'm just gonna go to my tools, and I have here the latest IDA. I'm just gonna copy it here. Here it is. And now as well, what I like to do for the development IDA is just simply create a folder called disabled and really move everything into disabled and put back some relevant stuff. So for now, I'm okay having IDA Python and the decompiler, for example. So I just move them back in. This will relatively speed up the loading because eventually when we run IDA under a debugger, we will have the debugger announce all the DLLs loaded, unloaded. It's too much. We have 20 megabytes of code. That's the beauty of development IDA, where we can minimize what we don't need so to speed up launching and iterating in the code. So these are the basic stuff, and that's where I'm gonna be developing. Okay, so let me build my first plugin with IDA CMake. So first thing is I'm gonna take a template from the IDA CMake. I go to templates, and here I give you multiple templates. So I give you a standalone idalib project where you can produce exe files, a loader template, a completely no bootstrap approach where you can just use the CMake prefix from the command line, gives you the utmost flexibility, and plugin and processor module. So I'm just gonna take the plugin here, go to all things IDA, and just make a folder here called IDA CMake test, and copy here the template. So now that template is ready, I can just do the development here. So what we can see here is we have the CMake file and the source code. That's the simplest source code of a plugin. So I fixed my SDK and now I'm ready to go. So all I have to do is do the regular CMake initialization. So I'm gonna say CMake -b build, and that will use the build folder to put the generated make files. On Windows, by default, it will pick Visual Studio if it's installed. On Linux or Mac, it will use GCC or Clang. Then you can launch Make. But since I'm on Windows and I like to use Visual Studio, already I have used ida-cmake to generate a Visual Studio solution. So I can already open the SLN file and just hit F5, run things. Now let's build it and get started. So, okay, let me open the solution and just hit build. So I can just say set startup project, and this is the plugin, and I can hit Control Shift B or go to the menu and build. And when I build it, I have it automatically emitted into the development IDA. So that's the key here. So bin plugins, my plugin.dll. And I should be ready then to put a breakpoint and hit F5 and start debugging. But before I start debugging, I just want to draw your attention to a couple things. In the debugging option, the ida-cmake project automatically sets ida-hcli as your host for the plugin. It also points to a sample database that comes with ida-cmake. Just as a convenience, of course, you can change that to anything you want. In the working directory, of course, you can do remote debugging, change the environment variables, and so on. So the environment variable could be handy when we talk shortly about idalib or ida standalone executables. But for now, put a breakpoint on init. The plugin should say sample plugin. All right, let's hit F5. And here we have the plugin breakpoints at init. And if I hit Control 3 or go to the edit plugins, and here we can see it's already in the list. And that will invoke run with argument 0, since that's the default entry. But if I put a breakpoint as well in the run method here and then go back, hit Control 3 and enter. Here it is, we got inside the run method. And then from here on, you can simply update the plugin, add features, etc. and hit F5, test again, and so on. Okay, now let's try a standalone application using idalib. So for that as well, I'm going to go to the ida-cmake, which I put inside the SDK, go to the templates, and I'm gonna grab another template, the idalib template, so we can copy it. We can call it anything we want, my ida-exe, for example. And I'm gonna drop to the prompt and same story. So I can cmake list real quick, just show you. So same story here. I did call that my ida-exe, so I can also change it here if I want, my ida-exe. And it refers to the environment variable ida SDK, so it brings it in with the bootstrap. Then we use find package, and I'm also passing the argument as well for the sample database. And that's it. Just now we use ida underscore add idalib, give the target name, source file list. And another very important thing for idalib as a requirement, we have to have the needed IDA installation in the path. That's a requirement. So as well, for convenience, I'm adding the CMake syntax for you that will add the additional environment variable on top of the path. So we're gonna expand the path and add the pointer to the IDA bin. And this is a requirement before being able to run standalone IDA executable using idalib. All right, so as well, now we can do the same step. Let's change this to that cmake -b build, and it will pick it up and generate by default something for Visual Studio. Same story. Now I can go open that, and that will give me an exe target. So set a start project and main, and here this is a standalone program, and that gives you an opportunity to write a new IDA UI or a very targeted standalone application that uses the full IDA SDK, but without having to be hosted inside IDA. And the convention is simple. First, you have to initialize the library. And this is important. This is what will help it find ida.dll and the ida directory. So we have to have it in the path. So if I go here in the properties, we can see in the debugger section here, we have already inserted the proper ida in the path, and that's the requirement. Okay, and also as a convenience in this template, I give you the database to test with, and so we call init library, then we open database, and we can do the rest of the stuff, a mix of regular syntax. You can use your own libraries, and also you can use the regular IDA APIs. Okay, let's build it. Here it is, and we have an exe. I can run it externally, or I can run it from the IDE. Okay, let me hit F5, and here we are. There's only one argument, which is the database I passed. Here, init library, it succeeded, and then open database, and by the way, here it is. This is the console output here. We can put them side by side, for example. And here it is, auto wait, displaying some information using the IDA info. So get minimum address in database, maximum address, get segment quantity, get nseg, get segment name, and display the functions and so on. So let it run, and it's just doing the basic stuff. And this is pretty handy as well, because you can now, if you prefer to use C++, you have that workflow nice and simple. Now, what I showed you on Windows is the same for Linux and Mac. Same ida-cmake steps, same SDK installation, everything is the same. Now, what is left is just to mention real quick this target here, the ida-cmake agent, which will install as well a very simple agent for Claude Code that helps us as well use Claude Code to work with the SDK. So I can install it with build here, and it says, okay, I copied the agent, and just this is a simple convention where the agent should go. And also it's created a Claude MD file, which is the current memory file for your project. And here, for example, we can customize this, and the template simply says you can refer to examples using the IDA SDK environment variable, and you can look at the include folder. And with respect to the agent itself, it will be read by Claude Code, and it will tell it how to build. So that agent is really simple. I didn't spend much time on it. It does the work. Of course, you can improve it a lot, and that's the plan. But essentially, that agent introduces itself as a way to build, compile, build IDA Pro extensions and so on, and also to create new add-on templates. So you can also ask it, if you have that agent, to start you with a template, and then you can ask it to build it for you and test it or modify the source code and so on. So this is a minimalistic agent that will help us with such development. So I do already have Claude Code installed. Now, a quick note on Claude Code is you need a plan. So you can get, for example, the Pro version or the Max that gives you more access. more stuff. And of course, you can go through the APIs. So you pay as you go. You put an API key, and then you can use it. And you can just simply install it with the npm install, a very simple installations. And once you install it, you log in and you choose you want to log in with an API key or with your plan. So I do have a plan, which is the most economical thing. So now if I type context, I should see the agent that I have. So I have the ida-cmake agent. And now I'm inside Claude Code. There will be a lot to cover how to use this, but this falls into the category of agentic coding. Claude Code is not the only tool for that. There is Codex CLI, Gemini CLI. You can use the VS Code agent mode as well. So if we hit this, you can use Klein. That's not the point really. So I personally prefer Claude Code, which also integrates nicely in VS Code and so on. So I'm just gonna focus on Claude Code, but again, it's nothing fixed in stone that you have to use this or that. Now, because the agent is known and we are in that folder, we should be able to say build, for example, or update the source code for us and do things like that. So first thing, let me try to say build this idalib project, for example. Now I noticed, unfortunately, Claude Code is not the best natively on Windows, so it might not always issue the right commands, but it's okay, it will correct itself accordingly. So now it's catching up with the code base, and it knows that it has to pick up ida-cmake because of the agent. And so it picked up ida-cmake, and ida-cmake knows how to build our exe, for example. So as well, for security reasons, it is asking us some questions. I can accept since the command is not dangerous. And here is just trying to figure things out. Eventually, once it's satisfied, it will make the right decision and build. It might just do the config or the build. Since it knows that I already configured, it just skips directly to the build step. And I can say as well, accept. So here is, it decided to build with release with debug info because that's how I wrote it in the agent. So in the agent, I think I told it to, by default, build with release with debug info. You can customize the agent. So the point of the ida-cmake is to give you something to start with. And now it wants to run it. Of course, now that will not work because I did not set up IDA in my path. So let me just do it. Gonna exit. And now I'm gonna say set path is ida SDK /bin, and then append the path. Now Claude Code allows us to resume. So I will resume from where I left off. So just -r, and here we go here, and I can just say resume, for example. And the last step, it wanted to test, so eventually it will test it. It will just find the executable and run it. Now, asking the agent to do those stuff is a simple thing. The power of such agents is to do more complicated things. And that's a topic for another video, but you can really do so much development with just telling it what to do. So here it wants to invoke the exe and specify the sample database. It's using Linux syntax, but if it doesn't work, it will know how to correct itself. So it might complain a bit or not. It seems it worked. Let's hit Control O, indeed, so it ran it correctly. So just a simple thing, for example, we can say, let's have it change the code, remove all the segment code, and display the first 20 functions instead. Let this plugin display the first 20 functions. Also remove the segment dumping code, for example. And it knows how to edit the file, and building, if it finds mistakes, it will edit the file again, fix the mistake until it works, and eventually it will run it and test it for you. Because of the agent setup, the way I phrased that simple agent, I gave it some hints on how to refer to certain existing examples, for example, and I also reiterated that. So with the right prompting, I can have it go look up examples to learn how things work, and also to refer to the include folder as needed to figure out answers. So here as well, it is asking me, okay, I'm gonna remove the segment code, I'm gonna update the code accordingly, and I'm gonna swap it with 20 functions instead. So I approve for this session. Since this edit is not dangerous, I can approve it once, and now it decided to build again, and that knowledge is coming from the build agent. And here it is, it produced the exe, and it might test it. And if the output is not satisfactory, it will iterate again and do it again. So here, build it, run it, and verify the output, for example. We could tell it always to, every time we have a change, we can go to its Claude here. We can say guidelines, for example. Each time I ask you to change the source code, build it with the agent, and run it, test it, for example. And that will be permanent instruction. So here again, it's asking me, and it will remember that in the settings. So here, this is what I was talking about Claude Code is not the greatest for Windows, because the model doesn't always issue the right commands, and it will take a bunch of tries for it to correct itself. Can we prompt it to make a good decision? Yes, but that's a bug in my opinion, and hopefully Anthropic fixes that bug and have it properly handle Windows command line stuff. So here it is. Let's see. Now builds, pass the test database, and the output is the first 20 functions, and that's it. It's happy, and so on. So this is the Claude Code part. Really simple demo, but it's now part of ida-cmake as a simple agent. So you could also, when you configure the project, like here, the plugin, same story, you will see it says to install the ida-cmake agent, you can run this command as well. So you can do that, let's say on Linux or Mac if you don't have Visual Studio. So here, if I list the directories, I don't have the .claude yet. So if I install the agent, now I have installed it and also installed the template memory file, which we can further instruct with respect to our plugin. We can tell it exactly what to do for this plugin and so on. Okay, so this video was a bit loaded. We covered native development, how to install the SDK, multiple ways. We covered a small part of ida-hcli. We spoke in details about ida-cmake and how convenient it is to use it. And we started talking about agentic coding, and in particular Claude Code and how to use the ida-cmake build agent to build the plugin, iterate, add features, and help us write better code. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.